Guys, Mustached Tom here to review the movie Black Phone 2. So I've seen the trailer for this one quite a few times, and even on its, consistent promotion, I was a little offed by this one, even initially, as it was selling the idea that the killer would return in a more, sort of, dead but not really dead, ghostly type vibe going on here. So that is the way they decided to continue this. I guess now that they're turning into a franchise, or at least a sequel. And the thing is that I understand half of the movie, of its subtext. However, it is when the movie takes the supernatural turn, or turns, plural, that it does, where the movie definitely falls the flattest. Now, the other half of that comes from this also doubling up as sort of this trauma, following up on trauma type film. And I do think that there is merit to that, and how people deal with things. However, in mixing it with the supernatural, I do feel like there was a lot of unintentional stuff that ended up happening. Anyway, to get into it, we follow Gwen and Finn some years later, I'm not sure how many years later, dealing with school, and initially dealing with that, those calls to additional stress, that being the calls that Finn picks up himself, and so on and so forth. These are met with his replies being that he doesn't feel like he can help. But again, it turns to the supernatural later on. So it could be taken as that the former pretty substantially through at least the beginning of the movie. It is when we do begin to see her perspective, Gwen's, the night terrors and such, where she's starting to get led by certain individuals, whether that be him directly, the guy they killed, or the children that apparently later on, I guess spoiler alert, he killed them first, and this is like the unveiling of additional information about this guy. So they end up at a camp where the mom had worked, and the possession slash ghostly phenomena increases. Now, it just so happens to increase involving the other inhabitants of that place, like the owner there, and there's this one coworker and Gwen's boyfriend who tags along. They make up the squad, and they're prepping to be I guess they're paying homage as well to Jason and Freddy, because there's the scenes that are possessive are definitely coming closer to Freddy vibes here. And what I mean by that is that there are scenes in the movie where he, the killer, who despite being dead is now doing this ghostly thing, goes up to Gwen in the dream, and then when he does something to her there, it happens to her real body. This is right out of Nightmare on Elm Street, if anything. And unfortunately, it does lead to the goofiest moment where everyone has learned of the secret, as it were, knows that they need to find some dead bodies to quell the spirits, as it were. And since everyone's in on it, he feels like he could just go carte blanche on what he's doing, and proceeds to like fight the girl. And what it looks like on the outside is she gets flipped around by an invisible force, which looked ridiculous way back when it was done via Freddy Krueger, and still does look ridiculous now. So I'm not sure why this caught on. It looks ridiculous. It's not, it loses any resemblance of a good, good tension, and kind of just becomes ridiculous. And that's very much the third act of this movie, is just that. And you have the fight back, which looks just as ridiculous, even, of Finn fighting him back, and you see him struggling against the ghost, and then you see the other people reacting to it, and he's struggling nothing. He's struggling against the air. It looks ridiculous. This is the unfortunate circumstance that this movie finds itself in by mixing in the supernatural, and as well as having people stick together. Bizarrely, you would think that there would be ways to strategize around that, because I often hear the criticism, it's come up a bit more, throughout horror movies, depending on which ones you watch, about people splitting up, right? It's a decision that is made by the group of heroes or heroines in said movie, and ultimately it is this result of it leaves people to die when they get split up. Here, there is still technically splitting up, but they're still in groups. It's not like anyone ever gets isolated for too long in this movie. And as a result, no one dies, or none of the characters die, except the killer. And I feel like there is so little consequence then, that, it kind of makes you go, well, you almost are rooting for the original idea, which is splitting up even more, but that's also just not good. You want justification, you want reason, you want mindful people doing mindful things and still getting outwitted. That is ultimately the best course of action in horror, in terms of writing, in terms of trying to get people doing smart things and still getting outsmarted. It is the ultimate of progress, and you rarely see it happen in movies. You get one or the other, and this is the other of people sticking together primarily, and there is of little consequence. It makes the threat less threatening as a result of this. And that's not what you want in your horror movie, even though, again, at least the first half of this movie seems to incite that this is more of a after, thinking and getting through the killer. But when the killer becomes a ghostly attempted killer again, the movie completely shifts what you would want. And I think an easy fix to all of these problems, and I mean all of them, would have been able to have fixed this whole supernatural plot. It's completely unnecessary. I don't know why they felt the need to do it this way, when you could have just had a copycat killer, or a copycat motivated type of person, and that could have been the sequel. That's it. That's all you needed to do to fix this entire movie, but no. For some reason, they decided to go to the supernatural, and now things look ridiculous. It's like, it looks silly, like the second half of the movie does. So this is easy, like a 4 out of 10, 3 out of 10. It's not good. I do get the promise of, like, again, certain ideas, but they're all couched in the very beginning of the movie, as I stated a few times now. But that's about where the good of this movie, unfortunately, ends. And the rest of those points would go toward the performances, despite the actions that they have to go through. I mean, the acting was pretty solid despite all of that. So I will give it up to that. This did not feel like they weren't trying. It is an unfortunate circumstance that they were put in a position where what they were up against just happened to be sort of ridiculous at the end of the day. But that is my review of Black Phone 2. And now that it has become supernatural, there is no end or potential end to this if this movie has made a lot of money. That is the unfortunate circumstance of what capitalism does to a movie that didn't need a sequel to begin with. Is they look to movies that haven't gotten a sequel, go, well, we can make some more money off of that one. That's capitalism thinking, overriding the creative process on top of creating a sequel where it does not need to be. And again, there was an easy out with a sequel in mind. Again, the copycat killer or copycat doer of taking young people, and maybe the two characters take on a more heroic role to get over their trauma, to shift that into they take action towards getting rid of their trauma in that way. That's like the easiest fix in the world, but I don't know what the people at the top were thinking, so there we go. Anyway, that's my review. If you ended up enjoying it, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description. Want to head you to my petition about small YouTubers, second to my PayPal. We can help support me and my child directly, and third to my Discord server. We can join Collab Shield, all that cool stuff. And until next time, bye-bye.